All right, welcome everyone, and we are super excited to host you in the first Super Monday of 2023. Today we are going to discuss few of very exciting product launch we are going to have this week in a couple of days that you all can enjoy as part of a Supersonic product suite. And we're going to dive deep into each one of them and explain about the value they can provide you as a game developer while publishing your hyper-casual game with Supersonic. Before we dive deep into the product themselves, we want to give some or few of our expectations for 2023 and the final with Supersonic, etc. So let's start with some prediction for 2023. Overall, best of our estimations, we predict the hyper-casual ecosystem to generate between $2.5 to $3 billion in 2023. Based on historical data, what we see usually is that 25% of it is coming from new launches, from games that are going to be launched for the first time during 2023. The other 75% will come from the existing portfolio of hyper-casual games that are generating revenue as of today. Probably, by the way, we're speaking about around $600 to $700 million that are going to be generated by new games that were not tested, even some of them. And we believe that together we can take big part of this market share. Overall, when we are analyzing hyper-casual throughout 2022, and this is the graph that you can see in the bottom of the slide, right? We see hyper-casual installs worldwide throughout 2022. We see the peak that we had during January and the beginning of 2022, which was still part of the Omicron and lockdown and COVID, etc. And then we see the small decrease post the lockdowns. And since then, we see kind of stability in terms of demand or installs worldwide for hyper-casual games. And the pick and play short session entertainment remains solid in terms of demand from users. And we expect it to remain as solid for 2023 because hyper-casual games does provide a unique type of entertainment that is very desired by users across the world as of today. Another thing that changed throughout 2022, besides the end of the COVID and lockdowns that boosted the supply, is that the macroeconomic and financial conditions, we discussed some of that in the previous Super Monday that we had 2 months ago, but overall, this kind of here to stay, right? When we're looking at the financial prediction for 2023, we expect the financial tightening to remain with us for 2023. And overall, what it means to you as hyper-casual developer or to us as hyper-casual publisher is that CPMs are going to be a bit lower than what we got used to in 2020, 2021, and the beginning of 2022, mainly because many advertisers are limiting their ad spend as part of the financial tightening and the focus to EBITDA instead of on the exchange of growth. And what it actually means to you and what is the bottom line here is that today, in 2023, or in the second half of 2022, we actually need stronger products to meet the same LTV benchmarks we could have generate in the previous type of eCPM. It means that we need a stronger retention, a stronger playtime, more ad impressions if we are making a bit less money per ad impression. By the way, overall CPMs went down from around $20 to $16, right? So we're discussing about 20% drop of the revenue per impression in the ecosystem today. And we believe that by building a bit stronger products, we can compensate on this 20% drop and stick to the LTVs or even higher than that we used to see during 2020, 2021, and the beginning of 2022 before the financial tightening. And overall, we all understand that, yes, everything becomes a little bit more challenging, right? It's true for hyper-casual, it's true for casual, it's true for mid-core. I think it's true all around, right? When the economy is in a more challenging situation, everything is a bit harder. And this is why we invest a lot in providing tools and technology that will help you and us to succeed even in a more challenging economic and environment. And what we are going to present today is our few features that we've been developing for the past almost 6 months, and we are going to release all of them in the next couple of days to the Supersonic platform. So whoever is using our platform will notice it in the next couple of days live in their own accounts. Before we dive into these 4 products, I also want to align ourselves on the entire publishing funnel that Supersonic has as of today. What we start today is with an initial test on Facebook. We get an initial marketability score. This is where you integrate our SDK. We will discuss it. It's also new, but we'll discuss it as part of the new product that we are launching. If there is initial interesting results, we are moving into more advanced marketability test. It means that we are looking into more media sources. We're looking at more KPIs, and we kind of build a holistic marketability score and prediction for the title. If we are seeing potential in terms of marketability power, we're moving into the iteration phase, where we test also more creatives on the marketability side and improve our marketability prediction, and still working hard on the game itself, trying to meet the retention, playtime, and APPU, which is a KPI we are using in the past 2 years in order to meet the needed milestone. So predicted LTV will be higher than predicted CPI on scale. This is a way to make a profit. In this phase, by the way, we can either split into more hyper approach or more hybrid approach. There was a lot of discussions about hybrid casual in general in the past couple of months. Just for everyone here to know, from our end, from Supersonic side, hyper and hybrid start from the same place, from the same funnel. And during the iteration phase, if we stronger engagement, we see that the mechanic is stronger and the type of genre can fit hybrid, we might move some resources into more hybrid iteration, meaning more focus on late retention, progression, meta, IAP, or keep it on the hyperspace, which is fine as well. And in general, we are working to meet the needed KPIs that we believe it will convert into LTV. Then we are moving into advanced testing. What we call advanced testing is actually adding monetization to the game itself, so we can start comparing LTV versus the needed CPI for scale that we have based on the marketability process we did in the beginning. And then we are moving into soft launch. And I'm reminding you here that we have few different type of soft launch. We have either auto user acquisition, so titles that have lower potential, instead of dropping them, we are releasing them with our own auto UA machine that we've built. Title with mid and higher potential are being launched as a managed titles. And we have, of course, a bit of a different flow for hybrid that's looking more on the monetization, IP conversion, etc. And this can also work. This is how Supersonic funnel is going to look like in 2023. Numbers, by the way, just to give you a rough estimation of how we predicted, or how are we looking at it based on 2022. So we see that about 20% of the tests running through Supersonic platform are generating a marketability score that is interesting for us, right? Under the assumption that we are not building a casual $10 LTV game here, marketability is a solid factor that will determine whether this game can generate profit on scale or not. So about 20% meet the marketability score. It's not the same, by the way. We will look for a marketability score for a simulation game or a runner game that is different than the needed marketability score for an action or idle game. But 20% of the tests of the prototype tested are passing the marketability score needed for their subgenre. Then we're moving into the iteration phase to see if it can be also a sticky and a fun and enjoyable game or just a marketable game. Around 25% of the prototypes moving into the iteration phase are meeting our day 1, our day 3, our day 7 retention, playtime, and APPU. In this point, we are going to add the monetization side, and our prediction here is quite well. So in most cases, 80% of the game that are adding monetization, they will be launched and generate profit and scale. Again, there is always the 20% that are reacting not that good to the monetization layer, which can happen. Not everything can be predicted, but we're feeling kind of comfortable and very confident with these conversion numbers. Overall, it means that about 100 prototype tested, 4 of them are being launched and scale profitability. I'm moving into Nir that is going to discuss a little bit in more details the new tools that we are launching in the next couple of days.
Cool. Thanks, Nadav. Hey, everyone. So as Nadav said, basically, I'm going to focus mainly on the 5 new tools that we are releasing starting from next week. Let's dive into it. As a reminder, basically, this is the funnel in terms of the product aspect. When you meet once you're submitting a game to Supersonic, starting from submitting in the website or directly in the platform if you already have an account, then moving to build your game, integrate the SDK, starting the test, moving to iterations, then moving to our live games platform with monetization, of course, then soft launch and global launching the game. I'll try to focus mainly on the aspects that are represent the new tools, and yeah, let's dive into it. Cool. So first thing is basically the new look and the new UI of the platform, which is kind of exciting. The first view that you will see once you're getting into your account would be basically a high-level overview of your entire portfolio from games you submitted and they're on the initial testing to games in iterations, soft launch and global launch games. It kind of gives a snapshot for the status of every game with the most important metrics. And by clicking on each game, you can dive deeper into each step and each part of the analytics or picture of the game. Next step is basically integration of the SDK. So up until now, basically, we only used our Wisdom SDK for monetization testing and starting from the soft launch phase. So starting from next week, we'll have this SDK available also from the testing phase. It means that basically you will need to only integrate once the SDK, the Supersonic SDK, which will run together with your game from the initial test until global launch. You won't need to integrate any new SDKs on the way. The relevant tools and the relevant platforms and SDKs will be initiated automatically in every step in the funnel. The second reason why now we're using this SDK in this early phase is basically to be able to use the Supersonic analytics, which we built in the past months, which I'm going to go over in a minute. Cool. So the next step is basically testing marketability. So basically continuing what Nadav said, I would say that up until if you're looking at 2 years back, basically all the industry looked only on CPI on Facebook. This was the main marketability tool to predict the marketability power of the game. Then we moved to test also TikTok and iron source because we realized that it's not enough and it's not predicting the full potential in such an early stage. So we added more networks and channels to have a wider picture and to have a better prediction. Now we're taking it to the next level, adding basically kind of an algorithm which not only take under consideration all of the channels, but it takes also much deeper look and analysis into every KPI and metric and data that we can get from those networks. For example, we're using on Facebook the placement spread, which tells us a lot on the potential of the game, type of users. So it's basically much smarter and things that we used to calculate in our head, and which basically now you can see it in your own platform and understand why you are getting score of 3 or why you are getting score of 5, which basically this is what is the main goal of the marketability testing phase, to make sure we are not running and too fast with a game that has lower marketability potential, which will turn out only on after 5 months of working on the game. Second thing that we're taking under consideration in the marketability score tool is basically the win rate, which is a new metric we added as in the past year. We realized it's super important and represent the power of the marketability of your game to generate more and more winning videos, to make the CPI lower, and to find more type of users using different videos. It also takes under consideration the timelines, meaning that if you're working on a game for 3 months and you're seeing the CPI getting higher and higher, and you can't find any new videos to lower it down, it says a lot on the marketability potential of your game. And this is something that the marketability score will take also under consideration. Last but not least is basically the required LTV for scale, which basically you will see once you're testing your game on Iron Source and completing all the marketability testing. Basically, you will get a prediction for the required CPI bid, which basically is if you're adding 30% of the margin, this is going to be the LTV that we are requiring to get in order to scale profitably with the game. It's taking it's kind of taking the next level of the prediction when we're used to look only on retention, playtime, and APPU in order to predict what would be the LTV of the game. Now it's actually turned into numbers, and it works amazingly. So stay tuned. Here's a snapshot for a nice example of a Tolman run we tested in the beginning of the year using the marketability tool. So basically what we can see on the left side is a summary of the marketability score per the game level. On the right side, on the top of the screen, we can see the marketability score per each channel, and the combination of them would be basically the score of the full potential of the game. On the left side, under the marketability score, basically we can see the certainty level, which is also a super important metric, as a lot of times we're seeing very interesting numbers on the beginning, spending like $300, and after some time spending more and more and testing and keeping testing the game, we're seeing the CPIs are increasing, and the game turns out to be not as marketable as we thought. So the certainty level is also something that can give us the enough confidence to look at the marketability score and say that this is something that we're laying on and we count on. On the bottom of the screen, we can see an example for a Tolman run tested on Iron Source network, which generates basically an amazing numbers on the IPM, on the score, and the predicted CPI for scale, which is 40 cents, which is pretty amazing. So this is the example for the predicted LTV for the title. This is how it's going to look on your platform.
Beautiful.
Cool. Next is basically the Supersonic analytics. So this is also a kind of a game changer and exciting news. We are now using our own analytics in order to analyze level analytics, which is continuing what Nadav said. We need to squeeze the lemon much better, and we need to make sure every game is optimized, every level is optimized in order to have to squeeze the LTV as much as we can, because this is what the new changes in the market requires. So starting from the classic metrics that we have on the Supersonic analytics, we also have the level funnels, which what is different here is that basically you can see the picture in one place, both level start, level complete, churn rate, fail rate. Basically it really helps to not only understand that you have churn in specific levels, but also understand where this churn is coming from and why, and have a much deeper look into your level analytics. On the bottom of the screen, you can basically see the level length, which is also a metric that is super crucial for optimizing the game and preparing the game for monetization, because we know that interstitials are the main monetization tool for most of the hyper casual games, meaning that usually that we're showing interstitial after fail or after level end. If our levels would be too long, meaning that we'll show less impressions of interstitial, meaning that our LTV will be lower. So also here, this is something that will help us to optimize and prepare the game for monetization much better, and also to understand specific problematic levels if they are too difficult. I'll go over an interesting example in a minute. Last thing is that we also have it per A/B test variant. So every A/B test you're going to do, you can see and dive into the level analytics of each variant, which is also super important. Nice example from Merge Miner, which demonstrates how important is it and to look on the level analytics and to have the ability to analyze it properly. So basically, we can see that on the orange lines, we can basically see the fail rate of the levels. We can see that although on some levels the fail rate is higher, the completion rate is really nice, meaning that if we look on level 5, for example, we can see a big drop, and we can see also that the fail rate is a bit higher than the average. On the bottom, we can see that also the levels are much longer, meaning that probably the balance between how difficult the level is and how challenging is it is not balanced enough, meaning that probably if we're looking at level 5, the levels might be too challenging and too difficult, so they're probably frustrating users, which takes them too long to pass the levels, because on early levels we can see that with the same fail rate they are passing the levels much faster, and the completion rate obviously it's much better. So this is something that's super interesting to dive into and to understand, that the level analytic and level length help us to better understand it. Cool. Last, in terms of the Supersonic analytics, is a crash center. Again, super important aspect to look. Usually we used to look it only on live games, optimizing the games through the devices and countries and OS versions and everything. This is something that now you'll be able to see also for your prototypes. And it's also super important, because a lot of times we're seeing we're iterating on the games, and we're hoping to see a nice increase and uplift in the metrics. And sometimes we're surprising that it didn't happen, although we did a great update. And in some cases, it might be because of bugs and crashes and things that it's really hard to monitor with the low amount of users we're testing in the prototyping phase. So here it will also help us to monitor much better, and to understand where these drops are coming from. You also be able to see and compare to the benchmark across all of our games to see if your crash free is above average or below average. So this is something that will be super helpful. You'll be able to see it per, as I said, country, per build, per OS version, per devices. So it's something that will help us to get much better performance, meaning we'll squeeze much more out of the users we are acquiring, which is again super crucial in order to maximize the LTV and the potential of the game. Great. So now, after we iterated on the game and optimize it and reach the benchmarks for advanced testing, which is the monetization test, now we will be able to enter the live games platform, which is not something new, but we do have some exciting updates and tools in the live games platform, which is a new UI. So we will be able again to see and to analyze much better your game performance. And obviously in the live games platform, you'll be able to see in real time every metric around monetization, ads impressions, APAPU, retention, playtime, and basically everything you need to see, same as profits and revenues, which is also super transparent and happening in real time, which is we know how important is it. This is it, Nadav.
Thank you, Nir. Maybe to summarize before the takeaways, we're adding a much more sophisticated marketability tool, so you can understand after the marketability test what is the needed CPI for scale, and we can discuss together whether it's achievable or not, right? If you have a needed CPI for scale of $2 for a simulation runner game, it probably doesn't worth the effort. This is number one. We do it in order to make you more efficient and us when picking the right concept and investing further in the right concept. We have one SDK that goes with you throughout the entire funnel of Supersonic. It saves you time, and it helps you to use Supersonic tools already in the prototype phase while we are iterating. And we are adding very deep analytics and crash center and many things that will help you through the iteration process in order to achieve the needed LTV for generating profit and scale. And we believe that overall, when we are adding this to the existing a huge product value Supersonic has in its platform. We believe that in today's market, this what will help us to pick the right games to invest in and to work as efficient as possible in order to meet the needed KPIs in order to generate profit on scale. Again, our goal is to generate a one-stop shop where developers can get everything they need, from testing to designing and iterating, and then generating money from the hyper-casual games. And we're doing it while keeping the same value we are keeping from our very first day, is transparency. So everything is visible for the developer to understand, even the marketability that Nir presented. You can understand exactly what is the united marketability score that we give the title, and then you can deep dive into each channel. What is the marketability score per channel? What are the KPIs? And to understand why it got this or a different score. This is it, guys. We are very, very excited about 2023. We believe that we can achieve huge success together, and we want to go all in and capture the biggest place in the hyper-casual ecosystem. We're very, very confident we can do it together with you. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll open now for Q&A. All right, so for whoever got a quality issue in terms of seeing the slides, bear with us a couple of hours and we'll upload the presentation so you can see all the slides clear and go over it in your own time. We'll move now to the Q&A. Question number 1. When we check for day 1 retention, what gameplay time should we consider for the test? We tested the game play time of 12 minutes. Result, day 0, 15 minutes, day 1, 21%. So what do you get out of this? Repeated gameplay after 20 minutes got retention down.
Yeah, basically, I think that for the initial test, we usually recommend to test a lean MVP. 12 minutes, it's quite enough, even a bit too much. So the main goal of the marketability testing of the initial test is verifying the marketability potential before we are investing more time and development efforts on the game. Overall, for 20 minutes gameplay, 21 day 1 retention, and 50 minutes playtime, it's pretty decent. Looks sounds really good.
And maybe to add here, for whoever is not working with Supersonic, we're using a new KPI that is APPU. We're using it for almost 2 years already. And the reason why we are using it is again, in hyper-casual, unlike casual, where you make most of your revenue from in-app purchases, in hyper-casual, you're making most of your revenue from ads, and the cumulated playtime that user plays impact the LTV that you get, right? So it's not about converting specific user to make a purchase, is to make them play as much as possible. Then the amount of ad impressions they are seeing is higher, and then the revenue per user is higher. And this is why we are looking, for instance, on APPU day 7, which includes both playtime and retention. So if you have a very, very, very strong playtime and a bit weaker retention, it still can generate a very solid APPU. It is going to be enough for the LTV, or vice versa. If you have very strong retention and lower playtime. Also for A/B tests, if you have a new variant that is improving retention but hurting playtime, which one is better? And in this case, we're looking at APPU that gives us kind of how many time cumulated, considering both retention and playtime, the user played the game, and how many ad impression he would have seen, and then the LTV he would get. Question number 2, will we have access to all this data from the initial test, specifically level funnels and crash comparisons? The answer is yes, right? You are integrating Supersonic wisdom before the initial test, meaning that once you are doing the initial test, Supersonic wisdom is already within the game, and then you can see all the data that was presented here. Is Supersonic shifting focus to hybrid casual? And I think that this is a very, very important question, and thanks for asking whoever asked it. The question is no, the answer is no. And I'll clarify. We believe that hybrid casual is interesting area, we already have games, right? If you look at our very old game Sorted or My Minimart or others, we already have games that generate significant part of their revenue from in-app purchase, or that have a very solid day 7 or even day 30 retention and a very, very high LTV on the around of $3. So we actually don't see, as you saw in the funnel, hybrid casual so far away from hyper casual, right? We look at two different buckets. We have the bucket of casual, and in casual, marketability plays a smaller factor because you believe that you can get to a very, very, very high LTV, and you are looking for the ones that make deposits on in-app purchase. This is one bucket. The other bucket is a bucket that it can be either hyper casual or hybrid casual. You can generate $2 or $3 LTV from ads only, from a mix of ads and IAP, etc. And it definitely falls under the bucket that we see under hyper casual with the subgroup of hybrid. We are going to do both. We are already doing both. We are running through the same marketability score. And when we see that the mechanics strong enough, and we can add some IAP monetization, and we can add enough progression and meta to have a stronger day 7, day 30, then we are doing it. And we take it into more hybrid world. If not, we keep it in the more hyper casual world. But in general, we are double down on hyper casual, all in on hyper casual. We believe that there will be significant market for hyper casual next year, for hybrid as well. We're doing both. We're not shifting focus at all. And as you see, most of the product release here that we worked in the past couple of months and releasing next week are very, very oriented to hyper casual, which we believe can be a game changer. Is there any distribution between Facebook, TikTok, and Iron Source to generate the marketability score? What if it gets good CPI on Facebook and TikTok, but the IPM on Iron Source is low, etc.? You want to touch it?
Sure. I think it's a great question. I'll touch two things. One is more high level, which basically once we're testing the marketability of the game, is because we know that once we're scaling the game, we need a lot of networks to work properly, the game to work properly on a lot of networks, and not only on Facebook or not only on TikTok or Iron Source. The idea of the marketability tool is to give a better prediction for the performance in each network. Iron Source as represent the SDK networks, and Facebook and TikTok represent the social networks. So the answer is that the practical answer is that Facebook and Iron Source, because they are bigger networks on scale for hyper casual games, they have a bigger part of the marketability score. But for example, if we're getting good marketability score on Facebook and TikTok, it's good enough for moving forward. And in the end, the total marketability score and versus the LTV that's required for scaling the game, this is what helps us to take the decision. So if we have two strong networks and one which perform weaker, it still might be good enough. So this is basically the way we're looking at it.
And by the way, maybe to add, and it's true for this question about the marketability and our other features, we are constantly upgrading them, meaning that we are constantly generating scores, then games get into the launching phase, we see the actual marketability it has, and then we challenge our algorithm, we adjust it, and we are working very, very hard on it for almost a year to make sure that it's as accurate as possible. Next question, really nice features, thanks. Is it available for all developers? Mean new dashboard features? The question is yes. Whoever is testing his game with Supersonic, with Wisdom SDK inside, and with Supersonic platform, will see all the features that I just discussed. It's true for whoever is using our product and platform. And next one, thanks for the presentation, very helpful. When will these new dashboard features go live? The answer is February 1st. Which means in a week from today, might be a bit earlier. We are in final QA, and once we are ready, it's all going to be shown. You'll just log in into the platform, and you'll see the new look and new features over there. Next question. It will be nice if you add an LTV calculator based on some assumptions. Do you have any plans for this? Great questions. So yes, it's we just finished planning Supersonic roadmap from a technology perspective for 2023 as part of the kickoff of this year. And this is definitely in our roadmap, and in general, maybe to give you the entire funnel that we see. You're testing your game gets a marketability score, right? Out of this marketability score, we understand what is the needed CPI for scale. So let's see that we see, okay, the needed CPI for scale based on the marketability is 70 cents. Then you start working and iterating your game. You have retention, playtime, and APPU. What is going to be added? It's not going to be live on February 1st, but it's going to be live in a couple of weeks, is that while you are iterating and we have only in-game data, retention and playtime, we'll start presenting expected LTV, meaning that based on the retention, playtime, and APPU numbers of your game, what we believe is going to be the expected LTV once you add ads. In any given time throughout the iteration process, you can look at your needed CPI for scale, which is also changing and adjusting because we are testing more creatives. We are updating our creatives win rate. We're getting more data from the different media sources. And look at your needed CPI for scale, look at the current predicted LTV, and decide whether it's smart to keep investing in this game. Can we get to a place where actual LTV is 25, 30% higher than the needed CPI for scale or not? And this is all going to be there. The next layer that's going to be added probably around summer is profit prediction, meaning that based on the actual CPI for scale and actual in-game engagement, we are going to present you a prediction for the profit this game can generate. Important note, it's only prediction. And again, we try to predict the future based on limited data. When the industry is changing on a monthly basis, it will never be 100% accurate, but we are doing the best as possible to be as accurate as possible based on the limited data and the changing environment we live at. We did quite well so far. Should we create our prototype by targeting of a 30 seconds video on Facebook, or by imagining that the players will play?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. By the way, we have dedicated explanations and best practices slides and videos on the platform for making creative. This is basically one of the most important parts once you're having a game to be managed to address your nice gameplay to the users while they're watching the ad and deciding whether to download the game or not. So I highly recommend to go over the best practices. For Facebook, yeah, we're usually recommending to test videos, upload videos between 20 to 30 seconds, between 4 to 6 videos. You don't need to work on any playables. This is something that once we're moving to test Iron Source, we're using interactive end card, which we are making internally. So basically, you only need to provide the first and the initial videos for Facebook, and we'll do the rest once we'll get to the advanced marketability test.
All right, we have 10 more questions and only a few minutes left. I'm going to go very, very fast and try to answer as many of them. Question number 1, what is the average CPI you are seeing in tests? If you ask your question, you didn't listen well enough in the presentation, because we don't care about CPI. CPI of what? Of Facebook, of TikTok, of Iron Source. What we're looking at is the entire marketability prediction. Sometimes CPI on Facebook and TikTok and Iron Source can be different between each other. Again, I would say that overall, I think that, again, because all of us still speak the language of CPI on Facebook, and it will take us probably a couple of weeks to adjust ourselves and discuss the marketability score, the marketability power, instead of CPI on Facebook. But for your specific question that probably was for CPI on Facebook, I would say that a good CPI these days will be in the range of 30 cents ish. We still see games with 20 cent CPI, but might be not as strong in the in-game side, etc. But again, we are not looking at CPI on Facebook anymore. We're looking at the entire marketability prediction.
And just to add, as part of the marketability score, you might have 40 cents on Facebook and 30 in one game, and in another game 30 cents, but the 30 cent game will have much stronger marketability because it generates also good CPI and audiences on TikTok, and on Iron Source it generates high IPMs and scores. So this is exactly the thing and the new language to speak.
Next one, what are the iteratable metrics for the average runner today? So as I said, we have different goals for different subgenres, right? Because again, we understand that the LTV we can achieve together is different between subgenre. If you're asking me for a runner, I wouldn't go with a game that is less than 4, meaning that I would like to see at least either 4 or 5 on the marketability score, to continue with the runner game, because we believe that runner, again, can generate about 60 cents LTV, 70 cents LTV. It's not an ASMR game that needs a 5 in my eyes. It's also not a puzzle or idle game that can live with a 3 or even 2.5. So in my eyes, runner would require either 4 or 5 in the marketability power, to be iterated. Something to add? Okay. How profitable you think pure hyper casual will be, considering other players are moving to hybrid casual? So it's a good question. First of all, I don't think that profit depends on what other players, other publishers are doing. I think that profit of a game depends on how users react to this game. If the marketability power is solid and the LTV is good, then it generates good profit regardless to what other publishers are doing in the market. The users are the ones that generate the profit, the players, and not the other publishers. Overall, again, based on our launches in Q4, and we launched 8 games or 7 games in Q4, we have quite a good roadmap for Q1 in terms of new launches. We believe that hyper casual can be very, very profitable, and we see and we still generate significant profit from hyper casual games as of these days. For the marketability score, you must need a fixed amount of gameplay time for the test. So what is the required gameplay time for initial test?
Yeah, so I think it's something that we answered before. As always, we're recommending to go with a lean MVP for the initial test. Again, to not spend any time and resources on a game that probably will die in a few days from now. So we focus. So the idea is to focus mainly on the marketability, which you almost don't need any content. So the requirement is basically enough content for creating enough videos with different scenarios and characters, etc. So this is basically the requirements. I would say that around 10 minutes gameplay would be enough for the initial test.
All right. Can we have a creatives list with their results of impression, CPI, CTR in dashboard on launch stage? Because we send a lot of creative and didn't see results without publishing manager help. If you are speaking about the marketability test, it's already there. On the marketability tool that Nir presented, you can see the data per creative. If you are discussing the publishing phase, the live game phase, when the game is profitable on scale, we can discuss it individually over Slack. But in general, you have millions of creatives running on million different campaigns, so you can't look on specific creative and understand its power, because it can react different on Google, TikTok, Facebook, iOS, Unity, AppLovin, Mintegral, etc.
But we are showing the best videos out of those creative testing on the live games platform. So anyone that using the live game platform should see the best videos of his game, updating every week, basically.
Some time ago, Daniel introduced publishing without FOMO, with auto UA for average game. But on Supersonic account, not a lot of games. Do you focus more on super hits? I wouldn't say it, by the way. I think that, again, when we are looking at 2022, we probably have less than 10 super hits and about 20 that were launched in this auto UA. It means that we are not only looking for the games that will generate millions of dollars in profit or tens of millions of dollars of profit. This is it, because we believe that if we spend and invest our energy a lot of time to generate a game that can generate a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit, instead of dropping it because we don't want to focus there, we want to publish it with our auto UA mechanism, and then we can still make and enjoy this profit. We are doing it. It was a big part of our strategy in 2022, and it will be, and it keeps to be a big part of our strategy in 2023. You said CPI doesn't matter, but CPI lower than LTV does. In this scenario, without a proper gameplay for a proto, only marketability test doesn't give you the whole picture.
Yeah, so definitely, I think it's a great question. The idea of the marketability test on the initial testing is understanding the marketability with minimum efforts. This is what hyper casual is all about: keeping efficiency, investing in games just when they are showing a good enough potential. the ratio between the needed LTV and the current marketability score is on the first step, on the initial testing and the advanced marketability test, is just a prediction, meaning that let's say that we're testing a runner and we have score of 2 and predicted the LTV for scale $1. We know that it will be very, very hard to generate $1 LTV for a runner, meaning that we don't even want to. Usually we recommend not even to try working on a game that won't be even close. Once we are seeing that we are hitting the benchmarks, for example, as Nadav said, for classic hyper casual, score 4 and above. So we are moving to the iteration phase, which this is the phase we want to add more content and iterate on the game. In this phase, we are also taking the decisions and want to see that our prediction for the LTV, required LTV, is compensate with the in-game metrics, and that we are able to build a decent retention, playtime, and APPU, which in the iteration phase, we're still looking at this balance, basically, between the marketability score and the APPU and the LTV potential. And we're always asking ourselves if we're on the right track and if we'll be able to reach the required LTV. So for the initial test, we don't need to having a lot of content because we're mainly looking on marketability. Once we're moving to iterations, we'll need to see if these, if adding the content and building the in-game metrics converted into the right LTV potential, and then taking the decision if we believe we should move forward with the game or not.
Okay, we ran out of time. If you still have more questions and there are a few that we didn't answer, feel free to send us directly, and happy to take it with you. Remember, we are going to be uploading a high quality version to our YouTube and our website. Thanks for joining our first Super Monday of 2023. I hope that you enjoy the new tools and they help your game to grow in the next year following. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more tips and updates from our team. Thank you so much and have a great week.
Thanks, everyone.
See you in the next published game. Bye-bye.